Think back to your school days and the playground conversations that you had with your friends and your rivals. I'm faster than you. I beat you yesterday and the day before. I actually did say that, and I was the fastest. That is logic. That is a form of inductive reasoning, drawing a conclusion from repeated events. We all use logic to argue and to persuade. Well, most of us use logic when we're in a rational state. It's something that is inherent in human beings. We all should know how to argue. Let me give you another example of something that may have been said in the schoolyard that is also logical. The fastest person always wins. I won, so I'm the fastest. Again, this is a form of logic. It is known as deductive reasoning, applying a rule to reach a necessary conclusion. So we all use logic to argue, but how do we use logic to truly persuade in the courtroom? In this video, I'm going to focus on two aspects of persuasion: deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning, to demonstrate how you can persuade a tribunal. Now, when I was at bar school many, many years ago, I was taught, of course, that you have to be persuasive in court when you are making an application, when you're making a speech, when you're making a submission. You have to be persuasive. And I was also taught that in order to be persuasive, you have to ensure that you maintain eye contact with the judge if the judge is your tribunal, that you are not monotonous, that you sound interesting, and that you sound as if you are interested in what you are saying, that you're not doing anything that is distracting, and that you speak with conviction. Now, all of those points are absolutely valid. They're correct. But what does science tell us about persuading a judge or a jury? It tells us, amongst other things, that there are two forms of logic that should be employed. Firstly, deductive logic or deductive reasoning. And secondly, inductive logic or inductive reasoning. So I'm going to look at each of those in turn. Now, deductive reasoning begins with a specific rule. So, for example, it might be a statute. And then it applies the facts of the case to that specific rule to reach a conclusion. And because the facts have been applied to the rule, the conclusion has to be inevitable. It has to almost inevitably follow. So the conclusion will be your point, your submission. So therefore, deductive reasoning is about certainty. So let me just give you an example of how it works in practice. So you start with the major premise. The major premise will be the statute that you're relying on, or the principle established in case law that you're relying on, for example. So that's going to be your major premise. So you start with that. And then you turn to the minor premise. Now, the minor premise will be a factual assertion that falls within the rule. Don't worry, I'm going to explain in more detail shortly. And the third step is the conclusion, the logical outcome that necessarily follows from the major premise and the minor premise. So if we look at an example from criminal law, in the legal jurisdiction of England and Wales, proceedings for summary-only offences must be commenced within 6 months of the commission of the offence. So that's the major premise. So the minor premise may be that the defendant allegedly committed a summary-only offence. So, for example, driving without due care and attention. He may have committed that offence in January. However, he wasn't charged with the offence until September. That's 9 months after the commission of the alleged offence. So that's our minor premise. We're looking at the facts, and then we're going to apply the facts to the major premise. And then we turn to our conclusion. The prosecution is out of time, and therefore the case should be dismissed. So you see how that works. That is logic. That is deductive reasoning. And as I said before, conclusions based on deductive logic tend to be irresistible, almost inevitable. Deductive logic is usually used where the law is settled. So there's no ambiguity as far as the law is concerned, and where the issues in a case aren't complex, they're straightforward. And deductive logic works really well when dealing with the admissibility of evidence, for example, when the facts of a particular case are not disputed and it's simply a question of whether or not the facts amount to a criminal offence, for example. So deductive logic tends to be much more straightforward and the conclusion tends to be irresistible. So I want to give you another example using statute. So another example of deductive reasoning using statute. So our major premise is that under Section 76 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984, a confession from a suspect is inadmissible if it was extracted through oppression. Okay, so that's our major premise. If we look at our minor premise, the facts may indicate that the suspect, when interviewed at a police station, was threatened with violence if he didn't make a confession. Okay, those are the facts. That's the minor premise. If we apply the facts to the major premise, the conclusion that inevitably follows is that the confession should be excluded on the grounds of breach of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984, Section 76. Before we move on, I want to caution you about the use of deductive reasoning. You have to make sure, obviously, that you are accurate on the law so that your understanding and interpretation of the law is absolutely correct. The second thing is that you're not going to be relying on emotional passion when you are using deductive reasoning. It is completely a matter of logic. You are simply relying on the fact, you are simply relying on law, nothing else matters in order to reach your conclusion. Now, inductive reasoning draws general conclusions from specific facts or patterns. It's based on probability rather than certainty, but it is persuasive nevertheless. So it doesn't guarantee the truth, but it does support its conclusions with varying degrees of probability. Okay, that's a bit of a mouthful. So let's look at common types of inductive reasoning. Firstly, analogy. Here you may compare your case with the facts of a similar decided case. And so what you're arguing is that in the decided case, the court came to the following conclusion. You are inviting the court to come to the same conclusion because the facts are on all fours. In other words, that they are similar. So that is inductive reasoning by analogy. And I would caution you that the strength of the analogy depends on the facts being similar. Are the facts that you are comparing truly similar on the relevant matters? So I want you to just bear that in mind when you're using inductive reasoning by analogy. The next example might be causal inference. You're saying that one thing happened and that thing caused something else to happen. So you're arguing that one event caused another event to occur. So let me give you an example. The facts might be that the deceased took heroin supplied to him by another person. As soon as he took the heroin, he died. Your argument is the deceased took heroin. Your argument is the heroin was supplied by the defendant. Death occurred within 2 hours of the deceased taking the heroin. Your conclusion? The heroin supplied by the defendant caused the death of the deceased. So this is an example of causal inference. It's a form of inductive logic that you would use when trying to persuade a judge or a tribunal. In this case, it would be a jury. Bear in mind that causation is not the same as correlation. So in the example that I gave you, the defense would no doubt argue that there were other matters or other events that could have caused the death of the deceased. So the defense might argue other medical events could have caused the death of the deceased. They could argue that the timing, given the fact that death occurred within 2 hours, other things could have happened that caused the deceased to die. And so if you're going to be relying on causal inference, you have to preempt what your opponent is going to suggest. how your opponent is going to try to undermine the causation point. So in this case, to strengthen a causal link, a causal inference, you would rely on medical evidence from a toxicologist, for example. You would be relying on the timings. So you would need to establish that the death did occur shortly after the deceased took the heroin. And you would have to try and knock out other possible explanations, such as the health condition of the deceased, such as whether other illegal substances were ingested by the deceased. So you'll see that with causal inference, the conclusion isn't inevitable. It isn't irresistible. You're relying on probability rather than certainty. Most legal arguments are not purely deductive or purely inductive. Quite often, advocates use a combination of both forms of reasoning to persuade a judge or a tribunal. So imagine that you're representing somebody on appeal. Your client has been convicted of a criminal offence, and you are appealing that conviction on the grounds that it is unsafe because the judge failed to direct the jury on the burden of proof. If we're using inductive reasoning, you would be arguing that in a number of cases, the Court of Appeal has overturned convictions where the judge failed to direct the jury on the burden of proof. So that's inductive reasoning, general conclusions from specific facts or patterns. The pattern being that the Court of Appeal, on a number of occasions, has overturned convictions where the burden of proof has not been explained to the jury by the judge. So if we turn now to deductive reasoning, the major premise would be that failure to direct a jury on the burden of proof is a material misdirection in law. The minor premise would be that the judge failed to direct the jury on the burden of proof. That's what happened. That's the fact. Conclusion, there has been a material misdirection. So deductive and inductive reasoning, essential if you're going to be persuasive in court, along with obviously being engaging, maintaining eye contact with the tribunal, not doing anything that's distracting, making sure that you are authoritative and credible, all of that good stuff as well. But knowing how to be persuasive by using logic is absolutely essential.